Welcome to the Happiness Matters podcast, where we'll explore happiness at work and show you how to coach yourself to be happier there and more successful too, no matter what.
Good morning, everyone. It's still very early this morning. It's dead quiet and everyone is asleep. I love this time when it's just me, Julia Seal, and you. I love that some of you are going to bed or having lunch just as Cape Town is waking up. I can see messages popping up on Instagram and LinkedIn, so I know you're out there right now. Isn't it wonderful to think of all of us around the world listening in, connecting and doing this coaching together, sharing our happiness and our unhappiness coaching journeys? So last week's episode was a bit longer than usual, wasn't it? It was a thorough exploration of what to do when we're using toxic behaviors in our relationships, all 45 minutes of it. So thank you for listening. I do plan to keep our sessions to about 20-25 minutes, and I got carried away with outlining our afflictive emotions and inner wisdom and detailing a coaching process as well to work with them. So next time I'll split the long sessions so you can listen to a complete episode while you're getting ready in the morning or you're at gym, washing your dishes or on your commute. Since we're on the topic, how was last week's coaching for you? Did you find it uncomfortable to look at the 5 afflictive emotions in yourself? It's just about as tricky as looking at the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in ourselves, isn't it? Perhaps even more so, as these afflictive emotions are the underlying emotions to all our negativity. And I say uncomfortable or difficult from an emotional perspective because it just doesn't feel good. So why would we go there on purpose? Especially if you're listening to this mini coaching journey on how to feel better. But it's also difficult from a cognitive perspective because we're not always 100% self-aware of how we're showing up in the world, the impact we're having, and the reasons why we're acting or feeling the way we might. It's what's called our fundamental ignorance. And it's also difficult to practice my coaching tools because establishing new neurological patterns through habitual practice is not an overnight phenomenon. I mean, then we'd all be calm and unstressed, or we'd own multi-million-dollar businesses, or have drama-free relationships permanently. And then how did you get on with my new coaching tool, taking the high road or the low road? I hope that listening to the bonny banks of Loch Lomond from 1700 Scotland helped you to create a memory hook for your brain in that pause moment between react and respond. By the way, in our playlist called Music from the Podcast, Fraser has added some contemporary versions of the song, especially the one by the Scottish band Runrig, who you might listen to already. Now, today is our Q&A session for the entire mini coaching journey on your negative emotions and how to feel better. And thanks to everyone who sent through comments and queries. They've been helpful in seeing how well I've shared the coaching concepts and tools with you. And of course, thank you for sharing your personal stories of what was useful and interesting to experiment with in your life. The topic that sparked the most interest for sure was around how to work more with inner power, the concept I introduced last week. In fact, so much interest that I'll definitely plan a full episode on just this topic. Now, a discussion on power and conflict is no small topic. It's what war is all about. South Africa had its famous Truth and Reconciliation Commission after apartheid was brought to an end to address gross violations of human rights. So to address the abuse of power, to put power into the hands of the previously powerless, and to do it without perpetuating the force and humiliation of the apartheid regime, what's called restorative justice, a very different way of dealing with power and powerlessness. So for our purposes here, since we're not holding a TRC right now within our company or our family, or even among the disputing voices in our head, although that's not a bad idea. If you're interested in more about South Africa's TRC, I've posted some links in the show notes for you. No, for today's exploration, let's spend some more time looking at inner power and powerlessness, what to do to balance them, and when, as a manager, to intervene to balance them in relationships around you. Power and powerlessness. Actually, our entire negative emotions mini journey is about being unhappy, feeling out of control, and feeling powerless. At the root of all toxic behaviors and escalated conflict in our relationships at work and at home is a sense of powerlessness. Others' powerlessness or our own powerlessness. So in all unhealthy conflict, all toxic behaviors, all difficult relationships, there are issues of power. And the two protagonists are us and them, the victim and the persecutor. And you are one or the other. In unhealthy conflict, we're either victims or persecutors, victims or villains. And I'm not going to go into Stephen Karpman's drama triangle right now, but I do want to look at what's going on in our brain. If we're feeling powerless, our brain perceives our safety, our very survival to be under threat, and our primal brain kicks in to react automatically with our inbuilt survival system, fight, flight, or freeze. This isn't always the best response to interpersonal conflict. Tricky situations between colleagues or family members, is it? Fight, flight, or freeze. The solution to it all is for you to take the high road. Remember to download the coaching tool High Road, Low Road from the website Happiness-Matters.coach in the fun and free section, and also to listen to episode 130 on how to use it. So the solution to all unhealthy conflict and toxic behaviors is to take the high road, to respond rather than react. And the high road, the best response of all, is to address the issue of power and powerlessness, to balance the power, to empower the powerless. And the powerless might be us, or it might be the other. And the magic is this: you can be the sole person to balance the power, whoever is the powerless one. It only needs one person to balance the power, neutralize the toxic behaviors, and change the dynamic of unhealthy conflict. Just one person, and it can be you. It can be you if you're the one with the power, if you're being the persecutor or the villain, which of course we never are we? But it can just as easily be you to balance the power if you're the one without the power. If you're being the victim, you can balance the power too. This is quite a thought, isn't it? And I can see many of you thinking of your own difficult relationships and unhealthy conflict and saying, there's no way I can change this or neutralize the toxins. And this is what I want to build on for you today, to expand this. Before I go there, I do want to talk about the persecutor a little more. We think the persecutor is always the one with the power, don't we? Let's think about those toxic behaviors, contempt, criticism, and blame. We look at the person who's using these toxic behaviors, these horsemen. They are the ones who are powerful in the interaction, or so we think. They certainly can seem powerful on the attack, shouting, throwing things, ranting. What's so fascinating is that they are not. At the root of all four horsemen are feelings of powerlessness. And knowing that they are actually powerless and that you're the one who can turn that around is the magic. And that's why I wanted to go to what's underneath these horsemen last week, the underlying afflictive emotions, so that you can see the powerlessness for yourself. I think Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, Swiss-American psychiatrist and pioneer on understanding how we process grief, says this so perfectly. There are only two emotions, love and fear. All positive emotions come from love, all negative emotions from fear. From love flows happiness, contentment, peace, and joy. From fear comes anger, hate, anxiety, and guilt. It's true that there are only two primary emotions, love and fear, but it's more accurate to say that there is only love or fear, for we cannot feel these two emotions together at exactly the same time. They're opposites. If we're in fear, we are not in a place of love. When we're in a place of love, we cannot be in a place of fear. Quickly, let's look at what's going on in our brains again when it comes to fear and villainous persecutor behavior. So when we're feeling powerless, our automatic brain recognizes our fear and activates the fight, flight, freeze response, our inbuilt survival system, our fear system. This generates the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. It lets them loose on the world. So when the other person is the persecutor and is using a horseman, this is driven by their feeling of powerlessness. Their toxic behaviors are driven by their fear system, and the way to neutralize the poison is to bring them back into their power. The examples of how you can do this, how you can neutralize the toxic behaviors and bring power back to the powerless, are in episode 1.29. This will get you started in how to actually do this. Now I want to go to you when you are the persecutor and when you are the victim. In order to turn unhealthy conflict around in your relationships, whether you are a persecutor or a victim, you yourself need to balance your power. Be powerful. Focusing on and finding your own power is your most powerful position. The opportunity for all change in your life, for you and your difficult relationships, comes from here. Now you'll immediately be thinking of this power as external. Its force, its control, its rank and status. And so for you to feel powerful, you're going to have to rely on external power shifts. You'll be relying on other people to change the dynamic. So someone taking your side, someone sorting out the bully, someone else getting fired or given a warning. Coaching yourself on your inner power will solve issues of power with others at the source for the rest of your life. And this is the true magic of this coaching work. By coaching yourself on your inner power, you'll be able to turn around any toxic behavior, any difficult relationship. You will be able to neutralize any horseman, and it will give you access to your inner wisdom behind the afflictive emotions. Your inner wisdom of loving kindness, compassion, self-compassion, sympathetic joy, even-mindedness, and equanimity. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? That's why you're here with me. Now, how do we do this? How do we find our inner power? And we do this by understanding for ourselves what power really is. Where it comes from for us as individuals. What are our sources of power? What are our internal sources of power and our perceived external sources of power? Why we believe we need external power, why we need the external world to change, and why we need the other to change. We do this by exploring why it is that we can never be a victim unless we are choosing to be. Now that's an interesting one, isn't it? The key to know at this point is that all our inner power and inner wisdom comes from, arises through our inner choices. What we choose to think. Think about that one. What we choose to think. What we choose to feel. And then what we choose to do out there in the world, how we act or don't act. And this is what coaching does to build your power. It can start on any of these. Your thoughts and beliefs, your feelings, useful and not useful, or your actions, your responses and reactions. We need to get to know ourselves intimately, how we think, how we feel, and how we act when driven by negative emotions and unhelpful thoughts. The very good news is that our internal power and accessing our inner wisdom is a skill. It's a skill we can learn, and it's a skill we develop with practice. And what exactly do we practice? I can hear you say. The best, most effective way you can do this is using what I've been sharing with you so far on the podcast. Learning to work with our negative emotions at every step of the think, feel, act cycle. What we're choosing to think and believe, what we are allowing ourselves to feel, what we are automatically reacting to, and how we are choosing to respond. We can practice using the coaching tools from last week's episode in times of toxicity and negative emotions. We practice breathing in order to insert a pause. We practice using a brain hook in the pause to remind our brains to respond instead of react. So we choose the high road instead of the low road. We practice switching from react actions to respond actions. We practice reinforcing new thoughts and beliefs by asking ourselves powerful coaching questions. We build our capabilities with practice, day after day, negative emotion after negative emotion, toxic behavior after toxic behavior, and difficult person after difficult person. It's quite something, isn't it? A real shift in how we think about toxicity, unhealthy conflict, and other people's negativity and negative emotions. And I'll say it again, by tapping into your own inner power, you'll be able to access your wisdom behind the afflictive emotions, your loving kindness, your compassion, your equanimity. Your true internal power is unshakable once you know how to do it. So work with me. If you are feeling powerless in a relationship right now and want more help, let's coach together in my 8-week relationship turnaround program. It will be life-changing. Why not sign up for your free insight session on the website Happiness-Matters.coach to see how we can coach together and harness your inner power and inner wisdom. I have spent quite a bit of time today on power and your negative emotions and toxic behaviors. I did promise to keep this episode short, but before we go, I want to address the queries I received from those of you who are leaders and managers and the HR executives among you. Firstly, thank you for sharing your experiences of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse playing out in your businesses and your teams and among your colleagues. Some fabulous horror stories that you're having to deal with. The issue for most of you as people leaders is the question of when you should be intervening as a manager and how best to do it. And the issue for our HR execs here today is that it usually falls to you to sort out difficulties at work, conflict between people and relationship issues, and particularly at more senior levels, sometimes even with your board colleagues, where issues of rank and power and the abuse of them abound. I'm sure you've all been asked to intervene in some kind of interpersonal conflict, to come in and run a workshop to sort out a team, or to talk to a difficult person to get them to change their ways, or to bring in an external coach to fix someone. I can see us all nodding. Been there. When there are difficulties in a relationship, especially at work, but it's also true for family relationships, we look to another, an external source, to sort it out, fix it, and make it go away. And let's be honest, we probably all do this to a certain extent. I reckon just about all of us would rather someone else would sort out the conflict, sort out the difficulties, fix the person who's causing all the issues, and we'd rather you do it as HR or as the line manager or leader, rather than learning how to do it ourselves or for ourselves. This is really no different from running to our teachers in the kindergarten to sort out the playground bully. I did this myself a lot, I can remember, and this is completely normal. Remember, this need for an external solution is completely normal. Standing calmly in the face of conflict and negative emotions is not what our primal brain, our instinct, has developed over the eons to do. No, as you know by now, it's trained to fight, freeze, or fly. So this think, feel, act, reaction pattern is just reinforced by our cultural and family ways of dealing with negative emotions. Many of us didn't learn how to deal with unhealthy conflict, toxicity, and negative emotions. So we didn't learn different responses to the primal brain's survival instinct. We didn't learn the skills from our caregivers. So the teacher or your mum intervened and sorted things out. And we didn't learn the skills, the capability to build on and refine as we grow up. That's why workplaces and homes around the world have such a struggle with negative emotions, toxicity, bullies, and persecutors. So many of us are unskilled, looking to an external solution by someone else. If we had all the skills at our fingertips, negative emotions, toxic conflict would just be another thing to work with, like planning out your week's calendar. No problem. Now, as a manager or HR exec, if you're asked to intervene, here's a way to address it from a coach's perspective. Firstly, and this interestingly is probably the most important bit, you need to know yourself well. You need to know your own reactions and responses to the 4 horsemen. The first step is cleaning up you. So coaching yourself on your thoughts, feelings, reactions, and responses to toxic behaviors. Once you are clean, and I love the idea of clean, think of the inside of your brain after a spring clean. This is what a well-managed brain looks like. You've cleaned up any unhelpful thoughts and feelings about toxicity, so you are neutral. So you are coming to the interactions from a completely neutral place. Neutral thoughts, neutral feelings. And your way forward is simple, or the steps are simple, but the practice of it is a little more tricky as you're dealing with other people and other people's unmanaged brains. So as a manager, leader, or HR exec, once your brain is clean, free of your own thoughts and feelings about toxicity in a completely neutral place, then this is the time to intervene in another's unhealthy conflict. So clean up your own brain, coach yourself to a neutral position, and even better, coach yourself to your inner wisdom first. Remember that all the episodes on our negative emotions, from episode 1.17 to this one, are showing you a coaching way of doing this, coaching your negative emotions to clean up your brain. Or, of course, you can coach with me to do this. Look for the patterns of powerlessness. Look for the victims, the persecutors, and look for the powerlessness in both of them. Neutralize the conflict for now, using the antidotes to the 4 horsemen to bring the heat down in the short term. Work with both on their issues of powerlessness, both the victim and the persecutor. They are using different patterns of powerlessness, but the same issue, inner powerlessness. When you are working with another, you are asking them to change themselves. And this is another reason why you want to be in this space with a clean brain. You want to invite them to take the high road. Forcing them will never work, ever. So you'll need to develop the art of inviting them into change. Oh, you might see a short-term result if you give someone a warning letter or threaten to fire them. You might get good results from the performance management process or even from remedial coaching if the client is open to coaching and the coach is skilled. However, change is not easy for anyone. Not me, not you, and not someone who has been told that there's something wrong with them and that they must change or else. No, it's the art of invitation to change, and that's best done by you, by role modeling what a clean brain looks like, by role modeling what taking the high road every time looks like, and by role modeling what a life of self-coaching looks like. That's the best invitation ever. Like Gandhi's fridge magnet quote says, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." Or as Gandhi actually said, "If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. We need not wait to see what others do." In developing your compassion for both the victims and the persecutors in their inner powerlessness, another 2 quotes might help you. The first comes from Donald Rumsfeld, the United States Secretary of Defense, back in 2002, about the lack of evidence linking the government of Iraq with the supply of weapons of mass destruction to terrorist groups. So perhaps not the most inspiring source for a quote, but the words are so good for us here when coaching, when we're helping or working with others' powerlessness. We don't know what we don't know. Or rather, as he said, as we know, there are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know. The second is even better. This one is from Plato's account of his teacher Socrates. It's called the Socratic Paradox. I know that I know nothing. Both so good for us to keep in our hearts and minds when working with others. What do we really know what's going on inside for someone else? Thinking like this keeps our compassion and loving kindness activated and our brains clean from our own thoughts and beliefs in order to work with another from a place of neutral. So this is quite some work to do as a line manager, a leader, an HR executive, isn't it? You're most welcome to drop me a note and we can talk more about what is the best avenue for you to take. Or let's talk. Or even let's coach. I would love to work with you. Why not book a free 20 minutes insight session with me right now? If you go to the website Happiness-Matters.coach and click on the yellow button, Coach with Julia, you'll find my calendar right there for you. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this dive into our power and powerlessness. And I trust the conversation around when and how to intervene in toxicity from a coach's perspective is helpful to you too. Next week, we'll be wrapping up the entire negative emotions mini coaching journey with a look at your discomfort and what it means to get used to feeling uncomfortable, and how edge work from the world of team coaching can help you with using your negative emotions as the currency of your dreams, as the currency to your happiness and success, no matter what. And my wish for all of you today, heading for bed or on the way to work, may you be happy. May you be free. There is no better time to do this together. Bye for now. I'm packing for my next trip to Windhoek in Namibia for a long overdue business visit.
Thanks for joining us on this Happiness Matters podcast. Do join us again here next week on Tuesday. You can subscribe to this series at Apple Podcasts on iTunes, or you can sign up for it on our website, Happiness-Matters.coach. That's Happiness-Matters.coach. COACH. Also, you can join our conversation on Facebook by following us there. Our Facebook page is also Happiness-Matters.coach.